Bury a log in the ground. Drop a strip of copper next to it. Water it once. Then walk away. In a few weeks, the wood starts pulling moisture from every direction. Bacteria colonize the rotting fiber and begin releasing electrons, actual measurable electrical current, into the surrounding soil. The copper reacts with the minerals in the ground and generates its own steady voltage. Roots grow toward it. Nutrients locked in the soil break free and become available to plants. No fertilizer, no drip line, no power source, no recurring purchase. The system has been documented, partially in pieces by separate researchers across 2 centuries. Each piece was tested, each piece worked, and then each piece quietly stopped being discussed. Nobody has ever assembled them into a single trial. That's the investigation. There are 4 documented phenomena at the center of this story. First, a centuries-old European tradition of burying raw logs under garden beds that reportedly stopped needing irrigation after the 2nd year. Second, Amazonian soil so fertile it is still producing food without chemical input more than 2,000 years after it was engineered in a region where agriculture was supposed to be impossible. Third, a Scottish clockmaker who in 1841 buried 2 metal strips in damp ground, connected them with a wire, and powered the world's first electric clock for months using nothing but the chemistry beneath his feet. Fourth, a Kentucky farmer who in 1898 powered arc lamps with coils buried near tree roots, no wires, no grid, and transmitted human voice through the ground 3 years before Marconi sent a click across the Atlantic. These are not folklore. Patents are on file. The Amazonian soil still exists. The Kentucky farmer's demonstration was witnessed by over 1,000 people and covered by newspapers nationwide. If you're watching this and realizing you've never heard any of these names connected, hit the like. That's exactly the point. Keep watching. And here is the thing that makes this a real investigation. These 4 discoveries are not separate tricks. They are 4 pieces of the same system. A system that was never assembled into a single framework, never properly tested as a unit, and whose individual components were each quietly marginalized during the same historical window. The post-war decades when synthetic fertilizer was being converted from a military surplus problem into a permanent agricultural revenue stream. So before we ask whether it works, we need to ask something more precise. Was it ever actually tested as a complete system? Or was each piece dismissed in isolation, which is a very different kind of failure? The oldest piece has no inventor. It predates documentation. Farmers in Germany and Eastern Europe had been burying wood under their garden beds for generations before anyone gave the practice a name. They called it hugelkultur, mound culture. An Austrian farmer named Sepp Halser brought it to wider attention in the 1960s by building productive beds at alpine elevations where most agronomists said farming was impossible. A fallen log in a forest stays moist long after the surrounding ground dries out. Flip it over and the soil beneath is dark, alive, rich. Farmers noticed and copied the mechanism. The wood was infrastructure, not input. The Amazonian piece is far older in practice. Scientists cataloging the rainforest found anomalous patches of deep black soil, terra preta, dark earth, in a region where natural ground is thin, acidic, and almost completely infertile. Tropical heat decomposes organic matter too fast for anything to accumulate. Agriculture in the Amazon was supposed to be impossible beyond a season or 2. The terra preta sites defied that completely. The fertile layer ran up to 6.5 feet deep. Carbon content was 3 to 18 times higher than the surrounding jungle floor. Villagers were still mining it and selling it as premium potting soil. 2 millennia after it was created, still producing without fertilizer or amendment. Subscribe if you want to follow this investigation. We're going to test this and document everything. You should be in the room when the data comes back. And archaeologists found pottery shards, fish bones, and the chemical signature of deliberately produced charcoal throughout the soil. The conclusion became unavoidable. Indigenous Amazonians had engineered this. They heated wood in low-oxygen pits to produce charcoal, crushed it, mixed it with organic waste, and worked it into their fields over generations. The practice is now called biochar application. A single gram of wood-based biochar contains up to 9,000 square feet of internal surface area, a honeycomb of microscopic tunnels that holds water, hosts microorganisms, and attracts nutrient ions. It does not decompose. Modern research confirmed that a single biochar application continued improving soil carbon, pH, and nutrient availability a full decade after application. The effects compounded. The electrical piece has a date, 1841. Alexander Bain, a Scottish clockmaker, buried a zinc plate and a copper plate about a yard apart in damp ground and connected them with a wire. Zinc is more reactive than copper. It began shedding electrons toward the copper while the moist soil completed the circuit below ground. The device produced a current seat in the circuit below ground. Bain used it to power an electric clock. His British patent number 8763 describes the design in full. The clock ran for months without winding, refilling, or any external energy source. Within years, telegraph engineers across Britain adopted the same principle, burying copper and zinc plates beneath relay stations and using the soil as a return conductor. The earth return method cut copper costs in half. Engineers found that orienting plates north to south boosted output.
This apparatus transmits
Then
my
the
voice
telegraph
clearly.
workers noticed something that nobody published a paper about. The grass growing directly above the buried plates was different, darker, thicker, taller. A station master in Yorkshire had pointed out a strip of lush green running right along a buried return line. The pattern repeated across England and Scotland, wherever ground carried current between buried metals. Nobody sent a researcher. The observation passed by word of mouth and disappeared. One word in the comments: which of these four systems, wood, biochar, copper, or earth battery, are you most skeptical about? One word. I'm tracking the answers. Nathan Stubblefield took it further. The Kentucky farmer patented an electrolytic coil in 1898. Copper and iron wire wound around an iron core, buried in damp soil. He insisted it was a receiver, not a battery, intercepting electrical energy already present in the ground. He used it to power arc lamps that burned continuously. His son testified the lamps hung in the trees with coils buried near the roots and never went out. Neighbors could see the glow from the road. No wires. Miles from any electrical grid. He also transmitted human voice wirelessly through the ground. 3 years before Marconi sent a click across the Atlantic. In 1928, Stubblefield was found starved to death in a shack surrounded by his buried coils. His patent is still on file. The coil still produces current. Here is what makes this more than 4 unrelated curiosities. Each component operates through a distinct mechanism, and each one amplifies the others, which means whoever dismissed them individually never asked the more important question: what happens when you run them together? A log is buried. Saprotrophic fungi colonize it first. As they break down cellulose and lignin, they produce mycelium, white filaments that thread through the wood and extend into surrounding soil. These networks actively transport phosphorus, nitrogen, and water from inside a rotting log directly to plant roots, faster than those nutrients could diffuse through plant soil. That finding has been in the mycological literature for decades. The question apparently never asked: if fungal networks are moving nutrients from decomposing wood to living roots, what does electrical current in the same soil do to that transport? Nobody ran that trial. In 2024, A team at Northwestern University published results on a soil-based microbial fuel cell harvesting electrons released by bacteria as they digest organic material in the ground.
We've
The
analyzed
same
the data,
bacterial
and the
species that
synergistic
colonize
effect is found
buried wood.
exclusively here,
The cell
where
generated
wood,
68
biochar, and
times
copper
more
zinc
power than
pathways
its
overlap.
sensors required. The lead researcher stated that as long as there is organic carbon in the soil, it could run indefinitely. Microbial fuel cells were first demonstrated in 1911. For over a century, the mechanism sat in the literature without anyone connecting
As seen
it
on
to
the left,
buried
the Victorian
wood
ground
agriculture.
return. On the right,
This is the
these
first
roots
time
mirror
you're
that
hearing
exact
Stubblefield's
historical
name.
pattern.
That's the whole point. Share this with one person who grows food. Now add biochar. 1 gram of wood-based biochar contains up to 9,000 square feet of internal surface area, tunnels, chambers, passageways carved into stable carbon. Those pores create permanent habitat for the same fungi and bacteria already active in the wood layer. They hold water, buffer soil pH, and carry a strong negative surface charge that attracts positively charged nutrient ions. Calcium, potassium, zinc, magnesium, holding them in the root zone instead of letting them leach out with the next rain. Here is the connection that nobody assembled into a single experiment. Peer-reviewed studies from multiple countries confirm that adding biochar to soil increases its electrical conductivity. A more conductive soil means a stronger galvanic reaction between buried metals. A stronger galvanic reaction means more nutrients mobilized through electrolysis. More mobilized nutrients means more material for the biochar to catch and hold. Each component makes the others more effective. The system compounds, but only if you run all 3 at once. Now add the copper and zinc. Zinc is more reactive than copper when both metals sit in moist, mineral-rich soil, which biochar amended decomposition-active ground is. The zinc sheds electrons toward the copper. The flowing current mobilizes nutrients locked in chemical bonds, making them available to roots that could not otherwise reach them. Roots grow preferentially toward the copper electrode through a documented biological response called electrotropism, first observed above Bain's telegraph return lines, never formally studied in agriculture. Zinc does not simply corrode. It releases zinc ions that plants require to produce auxin, the master growth hormone driving stem elongation, fruit development, and root branching. The electrode is not wasted. It is consumed by the biology it powers, atom by atom, season by season. Remove any single component and each one still functions. Run all 3 together and something the individual trials never captured becomes possible, a closed loop where nothing depletes and everything compounds. Subscribe. We're building this bed and measuring everything. You'll see the data before anyone else. Here is the specific setup that was never tested as a combined system. 3 layers, 1 installation. Layer 1, the foundation, a trench 24 inches deep, largest logs and branches on the bottom, fallen limbs, old firewood, storm debris, untreated hardwoods, only oak, maple, apple, cherry, birch, not pressure-treated lumber, not black walnut, which releases juglone, toxic to most garden vegetables. Wood already softening is ideal. Pack smaller sticks and wood chips into the gaps. This layer is the water reservoir, the heat source, and the microbial fuel cell. It will absorb thousands of gallons of rain and release it through capillary action. Bacterial decomposition will generate heat from below and produce measurable biological electrical current. Layer 2, the charcoal zone. 4 to 6 inches of charged biochar mixed with compost, spread directly on top of the wood. Raw biochar cannot go in uncharged. Its empty pores will initially pull nutrients from surrounding soil, temporarily starving whatever is planted above. Charging eliminates the problem entirely. Soak crushed charcoal in compost tea, worm castings, or diluted fish emulsion for 48 hours minimum. The pores load with microorganisms and nutrients. From the moment it enters the ground, it gives rather than takes. 6 to 8 inches of garden soil or compost on top, 1 copper pipe, and 1 galvanized zinc nail per plant. Opposite sides of the root zone, 8 to 12 inches apart, 6 inches deep. A multimeter should read AT 1.1 volts between the two metals. When voltage drops below 0.5 volts, replace the zinc nail. The control row is the part most people skip, and the only part that turns a backyard experiment into replicable data. Same soil, same water, same seeds, same sunlight. Measure bricks readings every 2 weeks. Weigh the harvest. Photograph both beds beside a ruler every week. Comment control if you're willing to run a parallel bed and share your numbers. That's how this becomes real data. The timeline is precise enough to be uncomfortable. Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch cracked industrial ammonia production in 1909. By 1913, the first plant was running in Germany. The same chemistry used to manufacture explosives was converted by the same factories into bagged fertilizer. American farmers spent $300 million on synthetic fertilizer, into bagged $40 million on Lommers spent $300 million by 1975. That number had passed $3 billion, a tenfold increase in a single generation. The business model was structurally elegant. Fertilizer runs out, you buy more next spring. A system that improves soil permanently had no place in that economy. The British Electroculture Committee, established under the Ministry of Agriculture in 1918, spent nearly 2 decades collecting field data on electrical methods in agriculture. Their reports documented substantial, reproducible yield gains. Physicists, biologists, electrical engineers, and Nobel laureates sat on the committee. In 1936, the same year industrial fertilizer swept across European agriculture, every report was stamped not for publication and sealed in government archives. The committee was dissolved without explanation. Only 2 copies of the full archive are known to have survived. Academic citations for earth battery and electroculture research dropped over 90% in the following decades, the exact period when fertilizer revenue was reaching records. No secret memo required. The market rewarded the disposable and made the durable invisible. What gets funded gets studied. What gets ignored gets labeled unverified. And the label does the work that evidence never had to. Therapreta soils engineered before European contact are still fertile today, producing food with zero synthetic input more than 2 millennia after the biochar was buried. The fertilizer industry is worth over $200 billion a year. The pesticide market adds another $60 billion. Both depend on soil staying hungry. A buried log costs nothing. A bag of hardwood charcoal costs $4. A copper pipe costs $3. A galvanized nail costs pennies. Reason this is not taught in every agricultural program is not that it does not work. It is that it works too well, too permanently, and too cheaply for an economy built on annual depletion. Subscribe if you want to follow this investigation. We're going to test this and document everything. You should be in the room when the data comes back.